You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Welcome to episode 10 of Storyteller Conclave, a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game you can, whether it's a new storyteller or a dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to bring your game up. I'm Rob, and I'm lonely, and Sarah's not here. But I brought a friend. Yes. I actually have somebody here with me in the studio today, but we'll get to that in a moment. We have some updates. Nothing major. The Patreon is live. You can always go on there. And I am looking for good ideas. I've seen a few so far that I've really liked from a few people. One of the ones is that somebody was actually interested in me running a one-shot, maybe. So talk more about it on the forums with us. See if that's something everyone's interested in. I can even throw maybe a poll up there if I can figure out how Discord allows me to do that. If not, I'll make up some kind of Google Doc and we'll do it that way because I know they have those. We are still dealing with the listen live on Podcast Detroit. The web listener isn't up yet, but you can still go and use the app and use that. We're hoping to get that, get some more information on that soon. Again, it's not our engineers here at the studio, and it's definitely not Podcast Detroit. We're working forward with a separate group who actually takes care of that streaming service. So I am now going to take a moment here and introduce our secret guest today. He is a man of esteem who's probably been storytelling for at least 20 years. You took a break, though. I will say that.
If you want to take the break into account, I was trying to do the math.
Okay.
I think my first story was about 34 years ago.
Wow. So I'd like to introduce you all to Earl Cook, a good friend of mine and Sarah's. I have to start this off because if I don't start it off this way, I'm going to get poked.
Okay.
How's that game coming?
Speaking of that break, there is a long overdue project for a dear friend who has been waiting very patiently for me to pick up the dice and the screen. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more during the episode.
God, I hope so. All right. So I know a lot of you guys were asking, maybe some of you have seen the Twitter feed, about what today's mystery episode will be. Well, the cat's out of the bag a little bit. It's about when players aren't there. I mean, we literally, as storytellers, work on stories and we build our scenes and we create our NPCs and we make sure we have the right group. And we have all these things put together and we're so ready to run our story and we get there and someone's late or someone's just, last minute tells us they're not going to show up. Or we're a couple scenes in and we're in the middle of a fight and somebody messages and says, I can't make it tonight. Now, there's all kinds of reasons for that. And I think the biggest things that we have to do is talk about what do you do then? I mean, and it's kind of comedy. Yes, the whole point behind it was that Sarah wasn't going to be here. And I thought, okay, this is a pretty amazing topic that I should talk about. And I will fully admit this was not my idea, nor my first idea. My first idea was running something comical here for you guys tonight. But my wife actually came up with this. She said, why don't you do something about when people aren't there? Because Sarah's not going to be there. And I'm like, okay, that's just too brilliant to not do. So here we are. And I pulled Earl in because he's had the experiences as well as I had in storytelling and been both behind and at the table with it. So I thought he might be at. Plus, he's doing some unique stuff too, but we'll get to that. So talking about being late, I know that, you have your typical kind of things of, what happened? Are they late? Are they tardy? Are they not there until very late in the game? I know that can kind of cause problems. For me, I have more of a problem if they show up late.
There's the long-running gag of, gamer standard time. When are we really going to get going?
Yes, exactly. And I think as a storyteller, I've always done the say that game is going to start at noon when you know it's not going to start till 1.
That can be very effective.
Yeah, because, I mean, everybody knows you get there, people kind of are on their own little time schedule, and it's kind of like a loose thing, but the more tight-knit the group, the more they want to sit down and start playing. But I still think there's that, everyone gets there, and sometimes they haven't seen each other for a while, or there's some kind of meme they got to show off, or something to that effect. But I think it still comes down to the players who are significantly late, who haven't shown up or haven't been good at showing up on time and maybe an hour or two late, that I think kind of stab you as a storyteller a little bit in your own feelings about it. It gets you frustrated more than you really want it to be.
Well, it can feel very personal because you're playing kind of the centerpiece. I mean, even if you're not you and Sarah have been very good about, I think, hitting a central tenet of it's not just about any one person at the table, but you do kind of feel like as the GM that you have a kind of responsibility too, so that if things aren't going well, it's reflecting like, am I not running a good enough game to draw you in? I mean, it feels personal, even if it's not. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons not to be there on time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, it is that stab of like, I did all this work effort and you're not even going to show up. Now, we all know life happens. It's a game. Life happens. And managing those feelings can be some of the hardest things as a storyteller, especially early on. I know for me personally, as a player, I take it almost harder than as a storyteller. Like I was sitting at a game not long ago, and a player was consistently late. Now, we all had it on our schedules. We literally after every session would go set, on our Discord site that we had for that, we would say, okay, what dates are good, what times are good, make sure it's on your schedule. I think somebody even put in like a calendar event through Google so everybody would get the calendar event. And this one person was consistently late, like hours late, because of either work or something got scheduled. Now, some of it couldn't be helped because it was, scheduling beyond the authority. That's fine. But on other time, the other time it was they just flat out forgot to put it on their calendar and ended up double scheduling with their spouse, and then was like 2 hours late.
And that's naturally very frustrating because you made an effort to try and put everybody on the same page, and it fell apart. And if it happens once, you're like, okay, well, but if it's consistent over time, you do feel rather unimportant or neglected.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I was feeling bad for the storyteller as sitting there as a player, but I think managing some of those feelings, at least managing the initial hit, and as a player looking at the storyteller and saying, hey, can we move forward with something? Can we continue with what we have here versus just waiting and waiting and waiting? I mean, obviously, like, I know I've waited as much as I would say as a storyteller, maybe an hour for a player who said they were running a little late. And then I was like, nope, we're getting started.
Well, and again, that's someone who gave you the heads up of, hey, something's come up.
Right.
And they're doing what is, I think, polite. In responding to you and just being like, I'm really sorry. Hey.
Yeah. I mean, for you, like, in your opinion, if you are the player who is being tardy, what do you feel is your responsibilities?
Again, with that kind of that central theme, it's not about one person, it's about a group of people. And if I'm holding things up, I honestly, I'd be impressed if you held it for an hour. I'd honestly tell you if I'm not there 30 minutes after start time, go.
Right.
And, I'll do my best to make the least possible inconvenience, inserting myself, in whatever fashion you devise when I get there.
And I think that's something that we'll definitely talk about. I mean, a little bit further in this of how to handle it, but I think the getting past that and growing as a player and recognizing, I mean, I think initially we all are kind of adolescents in it. We don't necessarily know how we should react or what we should say or what we should not say, or, how bad we're supposed to feel about being late or something like that. But I think finding that level of respect and group dynamic is important. And I think the utmost is being respectful of who you're going to see and the group that you're with, and keeping that contact level high.
And since I'm standing in for Sarah, she's usually very good about pointing out the need to communicate.
Yes.
Like, hey, you've been running late for a bunch of sessions. Are we running them at bad times for you? Do we need to do them maybe a little less frequently, and that'll make it easier?
Or change the time slot even in the day.
Yeah.
I know some people are not morning people.
I fully admit, I am a creature of the night.
That very much so, and that does cause, certain frustrations on its own with some people. So we know that we have to manage those feelings. We have to get through them. But the fact is it's going to happen. So as a storyteller, you always have to be prepared for it. It's not easy. It's not something that most of us think about within our story, but I think that all of us have to, not necessarily write it in, but be prepared that in any story, there's going to be a point where someone's just not going to be there.
I think it's harder for your more scripted GMs than, or maybe I should say better planning, like the heavy planners, the ones who have a lot of notes, than it is necessarily for those who do more of an off-the-cuff kind of game to make those adjustments.
Well, I think early on in storytelling as a whole, if you're early on, you're planning more because you don't feel as prepared to be able to work things off the fly, especially if it's a system you don't know well or a setting you don't know well. Or, like we were talking earlier, if it's a module that you're literally playing, that gets really challenging. Like, how do you ad-lib into a module? Those kind of moments can get very stressful if you've never even run before, or if what you have run has been limited. So,
and again, I guess it's your mileage may vary moment of you have to find the techniques that work for you. For example, using the Sarah's out of town kind of thing.
Sure.
I'm sort of like the guest player you brought to the table.
Very much so.
To maybe play an NPC or maybe play her character for her with her blessing.
Right.
Whatever thing works for you and your group.
Right. And I think that's kind of where we kind of step into it. So as far as like things you've done or things you've been involved in, I know I've had situations where the storyteller literally just piles them up in the corner, pile that unconscious PC in the corner and forget about them. Don't include them in the story. They're not there. We're just going to do something else. What other things have you either used or been involved in?
I've done a few different things, from straight up running the character myself as an NPC.
Do you find that successful for you?
It varies. If you have an established game and an established relationship with the person, it's much easier because you have a feel for, like, you know that Dirk Daringhood is the one who is always going to be the one who rushes into that room with his sword out.
Right.
So it's sort of easy to pick up on those cues. And, I usually try to play them a little bit more conservatively and play them back when I've done that. You don't want to put them at risk. You certainly don't want to lose a character or have something major occur to them that they didn't have agency in.
Right.
But that is one thing that I have tried that's worked in the past. But again, that was with that person at that time in that game.
Yeah, I would think that would be a very specific situation where that would comfortably work.
Yes.
Probably more so if that person was already heavily involved in that portion of the story. You did a pause and it was the next, day or even like you're just continuing the same scene and you just had to pause it last session.
On other texts that have worked that I've tried, we've brought people to the table temporarily, with just sort of like they were in a town. So it was kind of easy to do character A is called off for a family emergency. Like he was from that area, so it was very easy to just kind of write him off as he had a thing.
Sure.
Just like the person in real life. We brought somebody else in. They, were a good fill for the adventure for that segment of it. And actually they ended up coming in later and becoming a permanent part of that campaign.
Oh, nice.
Another thing I've done is put people not piling them up in the corner, but if it's viable within your story, giving them something to do.
Okay.
In this case, my most recent one, I had someone who was playing a very academic character.
Okay.
And part of their whole motivation was coming to this place was that there was an excellent library.
Okay.
And they'd been trying to work angles to get access to the library.
All right.
So I just happened to they at the last minute had a work thing. They weren't going to be able to make it. They were kind of important to the story, but I'm like, you know what? Here's what we'll do. Your character got access to the library. that's where you're at this whole, adventure. However, they can call on you at the library because you've said it's okay if I give you a 10-minute phone call at work, right?
Oh, nice.
And they're like, yeah, I can do that. Quick little conference call kind of thing.
Sure.
So we speakerphoned in and, role played over the phone.
All right.
A quick, thing. I think there were a couple of pictures sent over Google Hangouts to give a rough layout of what they were looking at.
Right.
They provided their wizardly advice. Okay. And then I only have a few more hours here before they'll close the doors and send me out. So you can talk to me again later. And then the rest of the party went off to go and get themselves back in trouble.
Nice.
While this person continued working and staying employed.
That's a neat way of doing it. I could also see that working, not if you didn't necessarily have contact with the player, you could have them impart knowledge to the players in that same way. So I could totally see that as being a very good way to do it. That's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. I know that for me, I've done situations where you play the alternative storyline.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, if you're in the middle of an encounter, that's a totally different situation. Some storytellers will straight up just knock out the character, or will in situations like an adventurous pulp kind of story, you can have them, dive through a window with an NPC, and then they show up scenes later, okay and unscathed, or whatever. You have that they drop out of the scene. But I think for the traditional stories where it's like, okay, so you guys just made it into this town, and the plot's going in this direction, and you really don't want that other player to miss out, you do a side story, where you pull the smaller section, you pull off a little bit of the cotton off of the ball, and you say, okay, you're going to go off this way and do this other thing. So I think it's a different way of altering the story. It gives the players who are there, who made the effort, a little extra. And it's not so much giving them, I shouldn't say giving them extra, but giving them credence for coming to the table and making the effort and being there for it. But I think I wouldn't last more than one session before putting plot back on the table as an option, if that other player wasn't going to be around.
And again, it's the difference between making a short-term accommodation for the unpredictable and adjusting. You can just call it adjusting to a different reality. We thought we'd have you available regularly for this, but unfortunately we don't. So we're going to move forward without you. When you can be regular again, great.
Yeah. And I think that kind of lines us into the truth of this is that it's going to happen. And I think as storytellers, we have to be prepared. And as players, we have to be prepared for moments like this. You can't get frustrated. So I mean, we talk about, what are good knowledge points for a storyteller, a new storyteller or a new player? What should they know? What shouldn't they know? And I think this kind of goes into that hat of ideas is be prepared for, I'm not going to say shitty nights of gameplay, but not what you expected. So, hey, if you expected this to be a dungeon crawl where everybody was going to get together, you're going to go crawl down through this dungeon and you're going to pound out, whatever, and you're going to just keep going down because it's like, battle royale stuff, and somebody doesn't show up and the GM decides to give you a puzzle room where the other person's locked out of the room, or a series of rooms, that's something's going to happen, and you have to not be frustrated about that. You have to be willing to work with the storyteller and move through it.
And I think sometimes you have to be able to make whatever accommodation that you do find to use, you have to be willing to make some changes to. You may have written up this elegantly balanced encounter, but if you're going to proceed and they're a character short or God forbid 2 or more short, you might have to put a few less goblins in the room or make the level a little lower on that lich or whatever it was you were going to do just to let the story continue to flow.
I completely agree with that. I think being flexible as a storyteller is the best thing that you can learn to be. And I think that's one of the key marks is that you're taking the time to make a story, but at the same time, you're making the effort to be there for the players who are there and making it not an impossible thing. And I guess case in point in that is also, or I shouldn't say case in point, but I think one of the cases that you should be very careful of that I think early on a lot of storytellers will do is they will punish the person for not being there. And I think that's a terrible thing to do. That pushes people away from your table.
And again, I fall back on the need for communication and just being honest. I think it is rampant, and I don't know if it's a gamer thing or not, but the tendency to overcommit because you get the opportunity to play in a great story, and with your friends, and that's a really big draw.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you'll be thinking, yeah, that'll be fun, and as you mentioned, it is going to happen, whether it's serious life stuff or work or whatever other minor things like Michigan roads being a great example.
Weather in general.
Yes, and
I played in a game where a character drove an hour to play.
Yes,
which is huge to me. That kind of blows my mind at this day and age. But at the same time, like I remember driving an hour to go play stupid games too. So.
But as you get older too, there are a different array of responsibilities and distractions that come into it, kids and other things that, are going to add to that list. So the flexibility is going to be what gets you through that. The communication is going to be what keeps your friendship running.
Yeah, and
with people.
I mean, part and parcel of that is we think about. It's going to sound really weird that this came into my head, but. We talk about like life as you become a gamer and you move in through it. As you start out early, it's easy for you to come to these events and do these things and, maybe do weekly game sessions and things like that. And then as life slowly invades your time with either kids or other pieces that, your work life, your travel life, things like that start getting involved. And then the one thing that most people don't think about is there's care for other people, like adults and grandparents that you have to keep in mind too. And those become even more unpredictable because of sometimes, family responsibilities are different. Sometimes people need to move in with other people based on situations and arrangements. So I think the communication, the understanding, setting up some realistic boundaries. I mean, if you're a storyteller and you think that, everybody should be able to make it there weekly and whoever makes it, and whoever doesn't, I think is hard because I think that's going to push some players away just because they know they can't commit like that, but it doesn't mean they don't want to play.
Well, and I think if yourself as a storyteller that this is the kind of thing that you just don't have a lot of flex on, you need to communicate that early on to people that, listen, this is a difficult campaign for me to be able to flex on. So if folks aren't going to be able to make it, it's going to be hard for me to work around you. So really, if you can't commit, I'd really rather, I get you on the next one.
Right. And I think in that sense, you've got to be understanding to those players who wait because I know I'm a terrible person at this. I will run games a lot longer than I expected. I've ran games for years and told people, well, the next games, that I get started will involve you. And they're like, okay, when's it going to happen? And I'm like, well, we just moved into Act 4. I'm going to end it at some point. So I think that's another responsibility that you have to keep in mind there as well. So, and don't overburden yourself. I mean, I was reading in the Discord the other day, one of our listeners runs a lot of games with a lot of people, and I worry about their psychology and how they're surviving this.
I remember running a similar schedule of games when I was, in my 20s. I can't imagine doing it now.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're going to jump this topic. I think we've done pretty well with it, but I want to ask you, because I think this is something that some of our listeners might be interested in. You're running a game, and I'm going to say this generally, for young adults. You're running for it's your niece and nephew, right?
My niece and nephew. They
How old are they?
13 and 11, 12 and 10 when they started.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
has it been that long? You guys are like almost a year now?
We're at like the 9-month-ish mark right now. And
how regular are your games?
They were running about every 3 to 5 weeks.
That's not bad.
And honestly, the summers killed it because they've got camps and all these other things, but they're still really eager to get back to the next session.
That's fantastic. I would have thought it would have been the other way around, that school would have made it more challenging.
I think summer, honestly, is different for kids. Well, some kids now than it was for us. Like for our generation coming up, it was a lot less structured. It was summer. Daylight came up. You had breakfast. You went out and did stuff with your friends, and you might have lunch at Timmy's house, and then you come in when it's dark. And now they've got sports teams and math camp and all these other things going on, and family vacation. By the time you parceled it out, we realized we weren't going to get another session until September.
Crazy. So, I mean, are they in like theater? Do they do anything role playing or acting wise?
That's what's been interesting for both of them. I was worried that they wouldn't take to it because neither one has had any kind of opportunity to do acting or to play an RPG of any sort,
Right.
except for like the most simple like phone game that had some RGB elements, but they're not character development or acting or anything.
Right. It's a story, sort of.
But both kids have really vivid imaginations, and since they were, toddlers, have been telling me stories. And I think it's a neat sort of change in the dynamic of where I was the patient adult who was willing to listen to all these fantastical stories patiently and ask questions. And now there was a great moment for me when we were sitting there because I really didn't know if it was going to work. I mean, you never know if people are going to take to gaming until they try it.
Sure.
But when we were sitting there at the table and I realized I had them hooked and that they not only were listening to me, but they were asking questions, they were participating, they were kind of feeling out the borders of what, they were doing. And like watching that happen was really very dynamic. I mean, like I've been doing this for a long time, even with my long break. It was neat to see gamers being born.
Yeah, I'm interested about that. Now you chose 5th edition.
Yes.
And you brought the starter box, and I got to take a look at it. I'm happy about that. We'll talk about that at some other point, but I like how it is. But you decided to not use the adventure in it.
In this case, I was kind of doing, and I think somebody had talked about on the Discord not having it anymore.
Right.
And I'd have been on a long stretch of not being behind the shield for a long time. I honestly can't give you a number, but it's many, many years. And I'd played a few times, which I'd kept me in the loop, and I'd kept on my gain systems and everything else, and watched some of the web shows and other things. So I was still very much in gamer culture, but I hadn't been a GM.
Are you a Critical Role fan?
I'm a casual Critical Role fan.
Okay, so you're more than me, so that puts you in the Sarah position. Okay.
Yes. Like I recognize the people, but I couldn't tell you about their characters off the top of my head or anything like that.
Fair enough.
But I really was a little nervous because that first adventure for most of us is the thing that hooked us.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the stuff in the starter set, which is, I think, quite excellent.
Yeah.
And a very good value for what they're asking for it. But it wasn't appropriate for the people I had in front of me. And flexibility, all of those old instincts just were there waiting to be tapped. So for those of you who have walked away for a while, I'll tell you, it really doesn't go away. If you were a gamer, you're still a gamer.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
You got to get back on it.
You might wobble a little bit that first time or two out.
So you're saying don't just grab a mountain bike and try and go down the side of a mountain.
Yeah, inadvisable, but how's your health coverage?
Exactly. Fair enough. Okay, so do you find something more challenging than you would with regular players?
Yeah,
and I say regular players in the sense that people who've gamed for a while, or at least more than just a new face to a game system.
I think there are things I have come up with for them that I wouldn't use with my adult players, just simply because they are kids, and as I said, a little different generationally from us, with having a lot more scripted time. So a lot of their free time, gets goofy and silly, and I let them riff on stuff. I mean, we literally started this campaign like I made up a town. Like I grabbed a sheet of paper, a pencil. I started sketching the town center that they were in. And then well, what do we see? And I'm like, there's a bakery. And I'm like, well, whose bakery is it? Dave. And because I could tell that, they've been exposed to a lot of stuff, a lot of movies and other things, but they weren't steeped in fantasy. They weren't steeped in, Tolkien and all these other things the way that, little nerdy me was at their age. And I had to do something for them. Okay. It's not about my story. It's about the story we're going to tell together.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, give them something very mundane to hook onto. And the whole adventure hook came off of them going inside. And they started asking questions like, oh, like, what's he serve? And, blah, 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 and yada, yada. And we had little asides, too, of like, okay, it says on my character sheet I have this many SP. What are SP? Okay, those are silver pieces. What does that mean? I'm like, all right, think about it. And I gave them like dollar equivalents for like copper, silver, gold.
Okay, that's perfect. No, that's good. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
And they like instantly. Like I was worried that still wouldn't work for them. That was like, oh, like I'm dropping $5 on some baked goods. Great.
Yeah. I mean, I can honestly admit that when I go into some game systems, they're like, that's 3,000 septums. And they're going, what the hell, how much is a septum? Like, how much is a goat? Oh, a goat's like 150 septum. Like, 150 septum? Yeah, there are any goats here. Oh, okay. Like you have to really think about economy. So that's great that you were able to get them something very quick.
And again, it was following what they seemed to put their attention on and drawing on. So they paid a lot of attention to the baker himself. They were asking questions about him and everything else. Okay. And I just did a super simple first adventure for them. And this was literally totally on the fly. I made everything up. I ditched the neat starter adventure in the box and made up my own little setting that I could drop into the Forgotten Realms if I want to, or keep in my own setting if I want to.
Okay.
Made it generic enough that they could run with it. And I just dropped a little hint because I wasn't going to force them onto Rails.
Right.
But that Dave, the proprietor, seemed a little upset.
Okay.
And, they'd been there like at lunch rush when things were really busy. And, they were all forced to sit at the same table. This was my one little thing there. We had 3 players, my wife, their aunt, and the 2 kids. She did a wonderful job of doing a role play heavy character, but not initiating much.
Sure.
Letting the kids sort of drive things and then showing them just like how you can do things, but not telling them or, like, oh, that's not a good move. Like no metagaming stuff.
Okay.
And, they're big-hearted kids. They saw this guy's, upset. Well, let's go find out why he's upset.
Okay.
Turns out his daughter's missing. People took her and they want money before they'll bring her back, but he doesn't trust them to actually give her back.
Right.
And they're like, well, we could check that out. And off they went. And it was, a simple find the bandits, free the girl kind of thing.
Nice.
And they really bonded on it.
Okay.
And, having a, NPC in the game that you can identify with is often a thing too. I think, it goes with, representation in any media. This little girl who's about the same age as my niece.
Right.
Who's, been taken by ruffians, and, kept from her family really resonated. And when she got to be like one of the chief people that freed her, they formed a bit of a bond, and they're still, as the campaign is going on, she still asks how she's doing. She checks in on her. This NPC has taken on life, and I literally came up with her on the fly and just, threw it all down. I made copious notes of anything that was, relevant. I think Overwatch was mentioning that, when you do make something up, make sure you note it.
Yeah.
And I've just been sort of letting them poke at things and follow down the rabbit holes that interest them.
So it sounds like it kind of gave you some of your juice back, your encouragement. Do you feel that this is a healthy thing for storytellers who maybe stepped away to start something like this, something fresh? Versus jumping right to writing something challenging? Because I know you've still been writing your setting for a while.
Yes.
And do you feel that this helps you with that? Did it give you a different perspective, a different feel?
Honestly, yeah. It's sort of rejuvenating on a number of levels because, again, the enthusiasm of a new gamer is very different from not that people lose it, but it changes over time. Okay. And there's an intimidation factor of like, if I screwed something up, would they know? They've never played. Right. So like the stakes were a little lower. So you wouldn't necessarily say play for kids, but do a one-off or something else where you don't have as much investment just to get your feet wet and see that, yeah, you do have it. Maybe you got to go back and practice a little bit, warm up, whatever, before you take that challenging mountain bike trail.
Right.
But you can still do it.
Okay. Do you have any specific advice for gaming with kids or gaming with a younger audience? Is there did you find that you were jumping in on them at a certain point? Or did you feel, is there something about like, hey, they were past 10, this kind of seems like the right time to do it? Or was it more along the lines of you watched them from a perspective of mental, acuity that this was something they were good for?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
There's always, with any age player, you want to kind of watch them and see what kind of reactions you're getting from them. With the kids, I think it is more important, especially during those first session or two, to kind of gauge what they can follow. Like, my niece is the more creative of the two. Like, she is more likely to end up going into a creative field where he's probably going to go into engineering or something more STEM related. Just
do you think they're going to keep
on.
playing after this?
I really hope they do.
Okay.
I could see it going either way. They could either totally be still into this. In my dream version, they come home for family visits and are like, "Hey, can you fire up a game session?" Or, "Hey, check out this thing I wrote. Will you play in it?"
Okay.
And that would be fantastic.
All right.
But again, there's so many things in front of them and things to do and things to occupy your time with. It may just be I hope a fond memory that they played for a year or two with their aunt and uncle and enjoyed it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And just to kind of close up this little segment, like your thoughts on the D&D starter set. Was it worth the $20?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, even just for the fact that it has everything you absolutely would need for first through fifth levels.
Okay.
A decent sized adventure. You saw the size of that thing.
It was thicker than I expected.
I expected something much more sketchy.
And it came with pre-generated characters too.
Yes, and the pre-gens and the dice got heavy use session 1 and are still being used now, although we've done some modification as they've gotten to understand the system better. Nice. One of them is still playing pretty much her pre-gen but with a different backstory.
Okay.
My nephew wanted to switch classes. And I'm like, absolutely. Let's sit down. I pulled out the abbreviated rules from the starter set.
Okay.
And let him look through those because he's a really smart kid. And I know he could be a rules lawyer really quickly. And I'm like, I'm trying to make it all about story for them right now.
Right.
Like their parents were even asking, can we buy them some books and stuff, like spare you the expense and let them get some stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Let's hold off. Right now, it's all story for them. It's not about numbers. It's not about anything else.
Right.
Let's let them enjoy this part, and then we'll introduce that slowly as we get a little further in.
Awesome. So, and it was $20, right?
Yeah, 20,
I think there was a sale that I had posted not too long ago that it went down to like 12 or something.
And I've frequently seen it for 15.
Yeah.
It's honestly, the $20 was worth it. We literally walked into Target, picked it up, and if you're even
that right there, I walked into Target and picked up a D&D adventure starter game. That's fantastic to me in my mind.
Well, in my youth, there was one hobby shop that was in, biking distance that we would go to that had a couple of things you could,
And that was the same with me. Like, the only reason why I got into gaming was because it was between my middle school and my house was a bookstore that actually sold periodicals and magazines and all kinds of stuff, but had a little shelf.
Yep.
And on that shelf was my first gaming book that I picked up. So yeah, totally get that feeling. So fantastic. I appreciate the review, and I hope that we see some updates as things go through. I'll definitely hit you up on the Discord and see how things have been progressing with the characters. So
I think there'll be some fun stories.
Excellent. Well, we do have actually a number of questions that came through on the Discord, and I want to give them a little bit of time here. So, and I'd love for you to jump in on these with me. So, so for start off, the Mad Elf asked, in an idea for the mystery show, what do you think of mystery settings for your game? As in not revealing plot elements beyond what the players need to know in order to make their characters. Your group will be Pinkerton detectives in the Old West to start building characters, and then you unfold a Cthulhu or alien invasion story. Part of me really likes that as an idea, and part of me kind of hates it. And I'll say that the part of me that really likes it is the part of me that would love to do it to specific players. I think there would be players who would love to create their characters for a setting that then get thrown into a crazy situation. But I think on the other side of that, you've got to communicate with your story, because throwing people into a situation that they're not prepared for as players is not good communication, because they may not want to play that game.
And I think you are reading it really well in that knowing your players.
Yeah.
Some of them are really adaptive and are going to be like, oh, wow, this is a new mystery. I'm going to chase this down. Great.
Right.
And when you have that established thing, you know that, this other character or other player doesn't do well with, being blindsided by things. They like to have a little time to process.
Right.
So maybe that's not the greatest thing to drop on them.
Yeah.
But then you could also do this as a short thing that you run with a couple of other people would be drawn to that sort of thing. So absolutely, I think there's great merit in having that kind of, variety and mixing things up. But if you don't know if it would work with your characters, that probably gives you a moment to pause and think about it before you do it.
Right. I think you want to have seasoned players who know the system, stepping into a situation like this where you're throwing this kind of confusing cowboys versus aliens out of just a cowboy setting, because they're going to feel off-put that they're dealing with something that they're not capable of handling.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity to both delight and dismay characters, depending on the person and how you present it.
Yeah.
For a talented storyteller, I think you could do anything.
Yeah.
But that's, part of that is knowing your players and knowing how to present it to them and how to segue in.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about the types of players there are. There are some players who would rather explore the world and find their own nooks and crannies and make it their own. And there are players who would look at this and say, I can't accept this. This isn't what I want to play because I'm not into jump scares. That's not what I'm here for.
Yep.
And you didn't let me know that I was going to have to deal with tentacles, and stuff like that. I'm not cool with that kind of a thing. So I think some of it has to be communication. I think some of it has to be knowing your players.
Yes.
So cool. So I hope that helped the Mad Elf. Technolich, are there any game systems from your past that you think back fondly but realize the kind of poorly designed system? Have you ever thought about a journey through a game system that has led you to a worldview approach to gaming today? Yes. My first game that we were just actually talking about, I saw, I was coming home from middle school and I stopped by this place, and for literally better part of 2 or 3 months, I was saving money because I saw a book that had a giant robot with a gun on the front of it. And I was just like, what the hell is this? I need to learn this thing. And I kept picking it up and eventually bought it. And it was Robotech, which is a Palladium universe.
Yes.
And it's its own setting because it's also a anime that's well known by a lot of people. I did not know it as well until after, which was funny.
That makes sense, though. I remember because I was being a little older than you.
Yeah.
I used to get up in junior high and watch that in the morning before going to school.
Yeah. It wasn't until I caught it on effectively a B network later, and I was like, this is what it was? And I enjoyed it. Not all of it, because if anybody knows Robotech who's on this, love is powerful, and apparently so is song. But we'll move away from that because that was not included really in the game. But I still have fond memories of it. But I will tell you, I have never played it again. I have books, I have everything ready to go for it, but I've never played it again. And it's because I'll honestly say the system kind of sucks. Palladium is numbers heavy.
Yes.
It's charts heavy. It's an interesting world. I played in Rifts following up because I knew Palladium. So I moved right to Rifts, and I moved to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Super Spies, and other strangeness. And every time I would move through these, I would love the details that were put into them and the setting. And I loved Rifts and Lee lines. And then when I found out that the creators were from Michigan, I thought that was really cool because they would put a lot of names of the local areas. I mean, I saw Farmington listed as where one of the Lee lines cut through, and I went, how is this in this book? I live in Farmington. And then I met Kevin Simbetta, and I went, oh, he's local. That explains everything. So for me, that was my fond memory of a game that I probably will not go back to. But if someone asked me, I might run Robotech something.
Well, and I think, too, as you get exposed to more systems and play more, the faults, gaps, et cetera, in some of them, you can continue forgiving because you love the setting so much. And other ones you might not be as forgiving on.
Yeah.
I think like our shared experience last year at Gen Con.
Yeah.
We got to play a system none of us had played in a long time.
Jesus, yeah.
And it was kind of a disappointing event.
Yeah.
But again, I think that was maybe as much or more about how it was run than necessarily the system.
100%.
But the system did it no favors.
No, it did not. And Shadowrun is a hard system, without a doubt. And the setting that it was set in, or the setting to be played in, and I'm not talking about the game, I'm talking about where we were sitting, was, in honestly, a horrific setting for it. We were thrown together with too many players, in my personal opinion.
Yes.
And we had some who were drunk. We had some who just were there. And then we had a GM who was literally railroading us through a story, which felt ridiculous.
Yes.
It should have been tongue-in-cheek. It should have been.
And he did not manage to capture that.
No.
He wasn't there. Again, we talk about why we go to the table.
Yeah.
He wasn't there for the same reasons that you hope people are going to be.
Because I've played Shadowrun with Chris multiple times, Overwatch, and he's amazing at it. He makes it feel like a dream.
And see, honestly, he is the only person I know that I would accept an invitation to a game from. Otherwise, I'm pretty much done with it.
Yeah. No, I get that. So what was it for you? What was your fond memory from your beginnings?
In this case, systems-wise, I tried a lot of different things, like Twilight 2000 and other things like that in that era. It was a lot of experimentation.
Yeah.
But I always came back to D&D.
Okay. No matter how crappy it was.
Yeah. It had its own.
Sorry. AD&D was fine. We'll step away from that.
Wow. That had its moments too, but everything has its growing pains.
It does.
But honestly, for me, what was kind of like a revelatory moment that sticks in my head is there was the Judges Guild modules. That were a third-party thing.
Okay.
I don't know how big it ever got realistically, but there was one dungeon master in our neighborhood who was like 2 or 3 years older than us, and he ran the Search for Calendars Gold module, which was this killer GM module. Like, you were gonna die. Like, we had no idea, but the thing is, it was such a neat, over-the-top, fascinating departure from the D&D modules because we read as many of those as we could get our hands on,
right? And
we were kind of familiar with their beats and the way that they told stories. And this was going off totally in a different way, and like it was sort of like stepping out of your PG movies into the R-rated world, and suddenly like, oh wow, I'm not as safe as I thought I was,
right?
And that sort of just opened my imagination in a different way. Like, I still remember the guy who played it, John Rabel.
Okay.
I don't know if he'll ever hear this, but if he does, he was part of the reason that kept me wanting to get behind the screen and do different things.
Nice.
From my early days in.
Wow. Okay.
And so that for me it was a module, but
nice.
Hey,
nice.
Matter of fact, Steve got me a copy of it. He found on eBay a few years ago, and I have it sitting on my gaming shelf.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I will keep my tattered copy of Robotech sitting on my shelf. It will still always be there in the books, and I don't think I'll ever get rid of it. I feel bad that I lost a whole bunch of books to a friend who moved away. He borrowed a bunch to play with, and I lost those, but I never lost my main book, which I was happy with. So, yeah, it will always be there. That place that will always. But I did second edition. I did third edition. I did 3.5. I did 4, and I think I did 4 or 5. But I like the new edition. I like where it's gone. I've as I said, I went through the Palladium universe. But there's a lot of games that they're neat and they have a neat setting. But I think some of the rules are exceptionally off-putting, and I love 7th Sea, and I forgive a lot of its insanity that's in it, because it is not a perfect system by any means, and I think 2nd edition has a lot of things that it can learn over time, but I think 7th Sea as a whole is a narrative story. It's not a dice-heavy story.
I have to I class it in my mind along with the White Wolf games. Story heavy, mechanic light, and with some problematic elements, but you're there for the backstory, the setting, the rich kind of drama that you get out of it. Yeah,
creating a dungeon crawl in 7th Sea feels weird. It has to be more pulpy. It has to be more about the scenes and the elegance. More Raiders of the Lost Ark, less traditional dungeon crawl kind of thing. It's funny to talk about it in that sense, but you have your first person shooter games where it's a squad going in and murdering things, and then you have your story narrative adventure games where, yes, the Lara Croft character can jump a 50-foot chasm with a pick and make it to the other side. And if they roll well enough, they don't fall the 40 stories into the water and have to make a daring sea escape. They could climb up and, poke fun at the bad guy who's on the other side, about to get, killed by the zombie horde, as you get away to the chopper that just happens to be outside, kind of a thing. It's a totally different take on things, where the dice help you tell the story in a different way.
Yes. And I think it's always, even if you don't find yourself spending a lot of time there, you should give a chance to some of these other genres, other opportunities to play, because you might find even just some elements that you pull from it and use later.
I agree. That's a great way to do it. I hope that is good enough for you, Technolich. Another question came in from the Mad Elf. Actually, I'm going to skip to Nox's because I know I did one for Mad Elf and I want to make sure if we've got time for it. He asked the question, what do you think are the benefits of a co-GM'd game, and what are your thoughts about the drawbacks? Now, I will honestly say this. I have not co-GM'd a game. I've been in games that have been co-GM'd, but I've never done it. And I think it would be kind of scary for me in a way. I mean, I'd like to try it at some point, but
it's been a long time since I've done one.
Okay.
Decades. But this was one of my friends that we had literally learned the games together in junior high school, and into college.
Right.
And amusingly enough, had homebrewed remarkably similar systems.
Okay.
That we would then just start bouncing ideas off of each other. So you could see we had a very strong connection. And although we were different types of storytellers, it was an interesting experience to do a true co-GM, because we had a large group at that point. And being able to just hand off a chunk of the action or part of what's going on to the person better suited, or to someone who wrote that part of it, or whatnot. It took more planning to set up. I think in a freewheeling environment, it could really diverge quickly.
Yeah.
But if you find, like, I know we've seen some things on the Discord where people have talked about doing large groups and things like that. Even having like a designated player who's like an NPC who sometimes helps, or who keeps track of initiative for you, or other things that have been mentioned on there.
Right.
Like, those bits of offloading do let you kind of expand your scope. And like, in this case, we were dealing with large groups and like kind of like getting to the level of tactical battles and stuff. So having those extra pair of eyes and another brain to handle parts of it was really useful.
Okay, so you're seeing co-GMing less of as co-storytelling and more as being able to parcel out sometimes those duties. Okay, I guess in that sense, I have had that a little bit in some of my games, but nothing to the extent that it was consistent. So no, but I could see that being a really huge benefit, and I definitely get the detriments of, divergent ideas about where the story is going or what an NPC is thinking is always a challenging thing in that regard.
It definitely ups your odds a little bit too, in favor of making a divergent mistake or having something where you're on a different page. So having that close relationship and the communication is definitely key.
Awesome. Well, I hope that kind of helps you, Knox, on your question there. So I'm going to grab, I want to say that's something I want to do probably in the next session. So I'll do this one for Mad Elf. When do you, as a storyteller, call a timeout or pause the game to address something that happened around the table? I know we kind of brought this up in, I want to say not last week or the weeks before a discussion, with etiquette. I think that when you're talking about a situation, you've kind of got to kind of feel out what that situation is. I think if it's an argument between players, it's something that needs to be paused almost immediately and say, okay, is this meta, or are you guys, are you arguing in character? Let's get this resolved real quick. If it's a player GM situation where the storyteller and a player are having a problem with maybe a rule or the way something is said, I think a timeout only needs to be made if the player isn't backing down, if the player isn't saying it is ruining the fun, is interrupting things, and you need to pull them aside and say, "Hey, this game is for everybody, not just you. Can we move beyond this right now?" I'm asking, and then I'm going to tell.
And I would agree with you that those things rise to that level of, we're going to stop the train for a moment, because they have the potential for doing real long-term damage to the group in terms of relationships and everything else. Let's make sure that we're on the right page with it. As a quick callback to talking about gaming with kids, a thing I don't use with my adult players, but I do use with the kids. When they space out onto their phone, which is supposed to be turned off.
Okay.
Or they're being goofy, but not like normal goofy of just, making a joke or whatever, but like consistently, and they're being like rude or cutting somebody else off.
Right.
I have a tally sheet.
Oh.
And the tally sheet is and I've been very clear with them about this. Each time they add one in there, it's a plus modifier on the random encounter table.
Okay.
And it does two things. It makes the encounter more likely to be a unfavorable encounter.
Okay.
And it makes the person with the most tally marks the first target.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Got them some skin in the game. They can win pluses and minuses too for being like, just doing something really thoughtful or doing something really nice. We'll put it in there. And sort of reduce that, and it resets every session. There's no carryover or anything. But I found that like that blunt instrument for young players was useful.
Okay. So one of the things that I know that I used to do in 7th C, as far as the rulings, like I wouldn't do something to that extent, but some of the game systems have like drama dice where you can reward players or you can use that kind of piece to do that. I think that's still a pretty valid way of handling it. I think that if there's an ongoing issue, maybe between two players who either constantly are arguing, or you have a player who's being consistent, something to remind them might not be a bad way of doing it. And I think what you're doing is a good early skill check for young players. And I'm not saying that's something that you should maybe involve with adulthood, but I don't necessarily see it as a total bad idea. I mean, but I would say, be mindful of your punishments or detriments.
And I try again to kind of give them control over it too, in the sense of, you're being disruptive, you're ruining the game for everyone. So,
right.
If you want things to go wild and crazy in the game and be a wild and wacky time, it might be milder and wackier for you. And it puts a little bit of personal, skin in the game, but it's not just the hand of the GM, stomping them or like take damage or, whatever, giving them a negative. It's sort of a like, hey, listen, you're going in this direction, just, so you're aware. And they tend to self-correct, again, a different batch of kids might not have as good a result. I don't know.
Right. No. I definitely see that. I think that's a pretty good idea. Well, without Sarah here, wrap up is going to be relatively easy because I have no idea what next week's topic is going to be. So it'll be another mystery until a little bit later. Hopefully we'll be able to. It's been a complete pleasure having you here, Earl. I think tonight went exceptionally well. And no, I'm not going to answer your question. It's going to have to wait till next week. So, Kate, if you would, let's get us finished up on this. You can find us on Twitter at @ST_conclave or Instagram at @ST_conclave. Remember, you can always jump onto our Discord. You can find that link on Twitter and talk with us, share some ideas, and join us on Patreon as well if you'd like to help us. Thank you again, Eric and Illy May, for helping us. We appreciate your patronage. Our intro music was Beyond the Warriors by Gooey Frog, and our outro, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. Both are found on freemusicarchive.org. The podcast tonight, again, is at Detroit, podcastdetroit.com, or on Twitter at podcastdetroit. Our engineer is Kate, and she is fantastic. But I'd like to thank everyone who's helped us out. Vicky, who came up with tonight's show idea. Thank you so much, sweetie. Sean and Sarah, when you hear this eventually, I hope you guys had a great vacation and are enjoying yourselves up there. And I'd like to thank our listeners and our friends. You all have a wonderful night, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.